Here's a little fun fact for you. There's over 196 plants in Plants vs. Zombies 2, and kohlrabi is not a plant in the game yet, which is shocking, I know. But since we got kohlrabi in the Cookie Run universe first, I'd say we can talk about this beast of a unit, kohlrabi cookie. So let's talk about kohlrabi cookie. Kohlrabi Cookie is Dark Choco's direct competitor for best dark DPS in the game, with both having charge-up attacks and crazy multipliers with similar kits and same elements. Only one can take the crown for fun gameplay, good animation, and actual good promotions. Lemon zest. For me, kohlrabi takes the crown, as he is really unique in gameplay. He's really fun to use, and as for all, he is probably one of the strongest DPS in the game as of right now. So let's talk about his kit. For his basic attack, kohlrabi Flames, he does a 3-hit combo with his first and second shot, shooting out a small black fireball, dealing up to 74% of damage. And for his third shot, he shoots 2 fireballs back to back, dealing up to 76% of damage per fireball. His charge-up attack, kohlrabi Burst, he shoots up 3 fireballs in a row, dealing up to 83% of damage per fireball. It's a pretty simple basic attack and charge-up basic attack, which is obviously in its name, that's why it's called a basic attack, but I mean, it is what it is. What else could you ask for from a basic attack? But thanks to his passive, with any type of damage he deals, he applies a stack of black tendrils on hit enemies. The damage will be done as soon as the hit enemies reach 4 stacks of black tendrils. This damage cannot crit by any means, unless, but I'll touch on that later. For his skill, Dark Hollow, he makes hella rough with the only mission of dragging you down for your sin of spending your college funds on the cookie who will be power crept someday. But hey, at least it does good damage, right? Because with his skill, he does 72% of damage per hit for 4.5 seconds, which is more than it seems, and his cooldown is pretty short, with the cooldown being 10 seconds, basically being able to have a nice field uptime on his skill with only a 5.5 second wait in between skills. For his ultimate, Dark Annihilation, he becomes Nouvelette, but dark, more emo, and slower. And honestly, this is one of the coolest and strongest ultimates within the game, with a 30-second cooldown and hitting up to 75% of damage up to 24 times. Listen closely, 75% of damage up to 24 times, which is not only insane, but is higher than Dark Choco's ultimate multiplier, at least without Dark Choco's promotion 5, with a total of 1,800 total damage coming from kohlrabi Cookie against Dark Choco's 1,150, which is just ridiculous. They really want Dark Choco out of the meta, and they're doing it quickly. But of course, like any other cookie, he also has artifact options to increase his damage a little bit further. With not a lot of artifact options available now for magic cookies, for now of course his best slot option will be Signature, as he increases his elemental damage up to 80%, which is 3% per stack up to 6 max stacks. And while a max stacks, you get an extra bonus of 20% attack increase. As the only other epic magic cookie, the only other option you have is Forgotten Grimoire, which is Wizard Cookie's signature, for an extra 8% increased crit chance on the skill and ultimate, and gaining the Forgotten Magic effect, which increases your ult damage up to 40%, which is really solid if you don't have kohlrabi's signature, considering that most of his main damage is coming from his ultimate, and having a nice 40% damage increase is going to be really good, especially when you're playing game modes like Raid, which your only goal is to go fast and deal a lot of damage in a short amount of time, which Forgotten Grimoire does pretty good, but of course his best is gonna be his own signature. But if you're poor, your only free-to-play options would be things like Warrior Oath for extra elemental damage, but you need the right teammates and right synergies to make that work and viable at its max potential. Strange Brew and Table for extra crit damage and basic attack is pretty nice. And if you're going to use him as a sub DPS for whatever reason, Null's Formula could work as a good alternative as well, as he can put the elemental res down with a very specific team, which I will talk about in a later section. Now let's go back to the passive, because this will lead us to the promotions, because for his P2, he increases the damage done by black tendrils up to 30%, which is pretty nice, because if the battles are longer than you expected, or or the enemies are just much stronger than you thought they would be, this will help a lot as his basic attack, his skill, and his ultimate will all help deal a lot of damage with his passive, because Black Tendrils will apply no matter what type of attack he does. And continuously doing charge up attacks will help this a lot as well, as Black Tendrils activate very frequently. Just like any other cookie, his P3 increases attack, defense, and HP plus 8%. And this is what I meant when I said unless on his passive earlier, because they decided to gate lock crit damage on his promotions, as his P4 Black Tendrils can now deal crit damage, which is wow. Which this also really affects what type of builds and what type of substats you will use on Kohlrabi Cookie, which I will touch on later on his equipment section. But gate locking crit behind a paywall is really shocking to me. But since this actually changes the way he is played and used and built, this honestly makes for a really good promotion, even though it locks your opportunity to deal more damage overall at the beginning stages of unlocking Kohlrabi. For his P5, he reduces the number of Black Tendril stacks required before the damage is dealt by 1 stack. So now, one charge up attack will fully activate the Black Tendril damage, and being able to crit every single time now that you have P5 and P4, that will be some really nice frequent damage, as charge up attacks take like no time to actually activate, so you will always be doing damage with your Black Tendrils, which is overall just really amazing and really good promotions for a cookie. Even though he doesn't increase his ultimate damage, his skill damage or his basic attack damage, just increasing the effects of his passive really affects him a lot in a good way. But if you don't have him up to P4 or P5, there are different ways to use and build him. So let's talk about Kohlrabi's best equipment. And obviously, as his unique weapon, Mystic Kohlrabi Rings is going to be his best in slot weapon, as it is made for him, having the nice increase on attack up to 13.65% extra, plus the 20% extra total damage increase, which is obviously nice on any DPS cookie. Boomerang Candy could also obviously work, as it increases your attack and crit percent by a lot, and I personally do believe that you should always be going for crit rate, crit damage on Kohlrabi. Even if you don't have him at P4, always go crit rate, crit damage. I'm a believer in crit rate, crit damage Kohlrabi. Never go elemental damage or attack damage. I just feel like in the end, it's not going to be worth, and crit rate, crit damage will always just be inevitably better for any DPS. So Sturdy Baguette Staff can help with that, also increasing the attack and crit damage by a good solid amount. For his main 3-piece set, of course, Count of Darkness is going to be the best, as he gets some good elemental damage increase and dark attack increase, with some good dark damage increase as well, and a little bit of defense for extra survivability, and of course a little bit of more dark damage with even more dark damage and a little bit of a dark attack. So really elemental based set, as it increases mostly your elemental damage and not really your base stats, as it is not just attack or crit rate, crit damage. It is pure elemental damage, which would be pretty solid on Kohlrabi, even though you're building him off crit damage. But if you see yourself lacking any pieces of the set, you can always go for the Sugar Feather Swan set, as it is obviously one of my favorite sets, increasing elemental damage and attack by a good solid amount, giving you some good defense and defense penetration, which is always good on any cookie, no matter what. Defense penetration will be a universal stat no matter what cookie it is used on, as long as it is a DPS. But if you decide to go down the wrong path and you decide to actually build Kohlrabi off attack and elemental damage as a sub DPS, Ghost Captain could also work, as you get a nice debuff amplification and elemental damage from your full set, as also using your full set gives you a defense skill reduction on your enemies by 20% for 5 seconds, which is really solid if you want to use them with a very specific team that I'll touch on later. Oh, of course, if you don't have any of these, you can always use and craft the items that have elemental damage, crit, or attack, or just anything that will help you boost your damage a little bit more, such as the Golden Radiant Rose Crown, the Mysterious Bamboo Hat, the Black Gothic Dress, and the Dark Assassin Pants, and many others. It just depends on how you want to build and use them. Obviously, I do believe you should prioritize crit rate, crit damage, then go for attack, defense penetration, and then dark elemental attack. But after that, I would honestly just focus on pure crit rate, crit damage on every single substat for every part of your equipment. Do not worry too much about attack or defense penetration or elemental damage. I do believe crit rate, crit damage will in the end be better for him in the long run. I don't think he's gonna be a good elemental attacker. He should always be used as a crit rate, crit damage character, even though his black tendrils cannot crit if you're below promotion 4. But I guess that wouldn't fully be necessary if you use specific teams, which we'll go on and talk about right now. You can always go for the classic hyper carry one-shot DPS team using your tagger and your support, this time being Alchemist and Rockstar, which Alchemist does have her elemental rest from her newest formula artifact, which is really good. And if you pair her up with the Ghost Captain set, she can even enhance that rest down by a lot, allowing your kohlrabi to do a lot of damage. And that's just with those two. If you include Rockstar's insane attack buff with the best 2 buff amplification pieces for your equipment, you can increase his potential by a lot, making him probably one of the strongest DPS of today, even when Dark Choco is in the game. This is possibly one of the best teams if you can use it right, because these two paired up actually make really insane units, as you can debuff any boss or enemies with Alchemist and absolutely one-shot the enemies, or two-shot in this case, by using both ults from kohlrabi and Dark Choco at the same time, as they have insane multipliers and insane damage output. So putting them both together just makes a team that will delete anything. But if you don't have Alchemist build, you can also just swap out Alchemist for Rockstar, as you also get a nice attack increase, which could be a decent substitute for Alchemist's res down and attack damage. Though I would suggest building Alchemist if you are going to use this team, because it will work a lot better. But if you don't have Rockstar or Dark Choco and you actually do have Alchemist build, you can also use Alchemist, kohlrabi, and Pistachio Cookie if you have Pistachio at promotion 5. As for her promotion 5 Divine Oath, after she gives her shield from her ultimate, basic attack damage is increased, and this effect will still continue when the cookies switch out. So kohlrabi will have an okay amount of attack increase from his basic attacks, which is actually not bad, as he can continuously do more black tendril damage out of that, and will actually be pretty viable as long as your Pistachio is promotion 5 and could actually deal some damage. kohlrabi is probably one of the few most versatile cookies in the whole game that doesn't really need specific teammates and can kind of just go with anyone as long as they can just boost his damage, even if it's a little bit. Obviously, I think kohlrabi is one of the best DPS in the game right now, and I do believe this will stay true until we get our next Dark DPS, but he's only going to get better with time if we're only going to get better cookies for him, such as Blackberry that's coming out, which is not only going to be our second support cookie that's going to come out on a banner, which is long due for now, because I think they've been overdoing it for DPSs to the point where we might not even need them anymore, as we could just use DPSs and not even worry about supports anymore. But if they somehow find a placement or make a game mode where supports can be genuinely useful and actually helpful in game, they would actually be pretty good. But until then, we'll have to wait and see when Blackberry comes out. But I think kohlrabi is a solid S tier cookie and will obviously stay in the meta for a while now, even with Dark Choco roaming around. So I think that's all my thoughts let out on this video. So thanks for watching, and that'll be it. Goodbye.